Adrian's domestic violence video of me unexpectedly went viral. Not because of my bruised and battered face, but because of my submissive posture, kneeling on the floor cleaning, while he held his mistress and mocked me. He proudly flaunted to the camera. "See, this is what happens when you don't listen." Netizens cursed him as a scumbag, but he made a fortune from the black and red traffic, even creating a Ninja Turtle persona for me in his live streams. I smiled and cooperated, making hangover soup for him and his mistress every night. My mother-in-law praised me for becoming more sensible. The mistress boasted about me helping her with her shoes, and Adrian became addicted to my gentle embrace, never thinking about finding other women, until a paranormal live streamer connected with him, staring intently at me with a terrified expression. "Mr. Adrian, your wife's complexion is pale and deathly, the face of someone who is already dead." The lights in the livestream room were dizzying, and the background music was a trashy pop song, extremely noisy. Adrian, with Crystal practically hanging off him, gestured wildly at the camera. "Family, take a look. This is what you call a broad mind." He waved his hand, pointing at me. "Those of you who argue over every little thing, learn from my wife's broad-mindedness." I was kneeling on the floor, meticulously wiping specks of mud from the heel of Crystal's high heels with a soft cloth. The camera zoomed in on my face, capturing every expression. I looked up, revealing a shy but incredibly docile smile. "My husband is right, Miss Crystal is a guest, it's only right." The comments section exploded like dumplings in a boiling pot. "Holy crap! Is this PUA down to the bone? Has this woman been cursed? How can she tolerate this? Scumbagdi. The mistress deserves a terrible death. Is it just me? Or does this wife look strangely beautiful? Her skin is reflecting light. The person above +1, and she's getting more and more beautiful, eerily so. Adrian is awesome. This is a real man. Women should be trained like this. Rewarded with a sports car X1. Adrian watched the rapidly increasing rewards and concurrent viewers on the screen, grinning smugly, revealing his teeth stained yellow from smoke. He enjoyed this feeling of being cursed and envied at the same time. Black and red was still red, and traffic meant money. He initially edited and uploaded the video of me being beaten half to death, intending to sell a sob story and create a poor man driven crazy by his wife persona, but the netizens were sharp-eyed and cursed him to hell. He smelled an opportunity and decided to go all in, live streaming how he tamed his wife, and flaunting his mistress in front of me. The more he trampled on me, the higher the traffic. At this moment, my mother-in-law wiggled her plump waist into the camera, her gold-toothed mouth stretching to her ears. "Oh, my Adrian is so capable, marrying such a sensible wife. Clara, go hand-wash my silk pajamas, I don't trust the washing machine." "Okay, Mom, I'll go right away." I answered gently, stood up, my knees numb from kneeling for so long, but the smile on my face remained unchanged. After the live stream ended, it was already late at night. Adrian and Crystal were engaged in passionate lovemaking in the living room, making no attempt to hide the sounds. I carried 2 bowls of steaming hangover soup into the master bedroom. "Husband, Miss Crystal, have some soup to warm your stomach, otherwise you'll have a headache tomorrow." Adrian waved his hand dismissively, his eyes still glued to Crystal's snow-white body. Crystal, on the other hand, gave me a smug look, as if ordering a servant. "Put it there, you have no sense." I placed the bowls of soup on the bedside table. After all, this was my nightly task. Then I returned to my cold guest room. The dressing table filled with expensive skincare products that Adrian had given me. Among them was a bottle of light yellow essence, the label torn off. He had brought it back suddenly a month ago, saying it was something a friend had brought back from Thailand. Something that could transform a person if used. I unscrewed the cap, and a strange aroma, a mixture of floral fragrance and some indescribable greasiness, wafted out. Adrian said it was top-grade botanical essential oil. The next night, Adrian started his live stream as usual. To create some buzz, he started playing random connection games. Several small streamers were completely annihilated by him and his brain-dead fans, until he connected with a connection request from an ID called Midnight Bell. The screen split in 2, and on the other side was a man whose face could not be seen, wearing a hooded sweatshirt, the background dark, with only the outlines of talismans and compasses faintly visible. Oh, dabbling in feudal superstition? Adrian scoffed. Come on, tell me, when will I become the #1 streamer on the platform? The paranormal streamer ignored his provocation, and the camera seemed to adjust, pointing at me. I was sitting on the sofa behind Adrian, head lowered, quietly peeling an apple, my long eyelashes casting a shadow over the emotions in my eyes. The livestream room suddenly fell silent for a few seconds. Then the streamer named Midnight Bell spoke, his voice low and hoarse, with an undeniable seriousness. Mr. Adrian. He paused, emphasizing each word. This lady behind you. Miss Clara. My hand peeling the apple paused slightly. Her philtrum is blue, her complexion is pale with an eerie red glow, and she is surrounded by a faint, almost imperceptible black aura. This is definitely not the face of a living person. Adrian was stunned for a moment, then burst into exaggerated laughter. Ha ha ha, moron. Trying to scam an old-timer like me? Cursing my wife to die? You're looking for death. My wife is alive and well, she's more lively than you. My mother-in-law also squeezed into the camera, hands on her hips, scolding. Where did this quack come from? Talking nonsense. My daughter-in-law is young and beautiful, and in good health. If you spout any more nonsense, I'll call the police. Crystal nestled next to Adrian, sweetly echoing. That's right, Adrian, this person is disgusting, hang up on him. The comments section was also divided into two factions, some cursing the streamer as a madman, others starting to suspect. I knew something was wrong with this woman. She's beautiful like a mannequin. Every time the camera pans to her, I feel a chill down my spine. Streamer, please tell us what's going on? The paranormal streamer was deaf to the surrounding noise, his gaze seeming to penetrate the screen, locking onto me. Mr. Adrian, think carefully. This Miss Clara, is she afraid of light? Is her body temperature abnormally low? And does she never get hurt, or rather, if she gets hurt, does she not feel the pain? Adrian's laughter stopped abruptly, like a rooster being strangled. Afraid of light? Yes, Clara always closed the curtains, saying the sunlight was too bright. Low body temperature? Hugging her in the summer felt like holding a block of ice. He thought it was a constitution issue. Injuries. Last time, she picked up the broken glass shards he dropped with her bare hands. The shards cut her palm, but she acted like nothing happened, smiling and saying it didn't hurt, and the wound disappeared the next day. At the time, he thought the makeup had covered it. Adrian's face paled a little, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He suddenly turned his head to look at me. I had just finished peeling the apple, looked up, gently lifted the perfectly continuous apple peel, and facing him, and facing the camera, gave a naive and charming smile. Husband, do you want to eat an apple? It's very sweet. My eyes were pure, my smile innocent, as if I couldn't understand what the paranormal streamer was saying at all. Adrian looked at my flawlessly beautiful face, the fear in his eyes slowly replaced by a hint of confusion. Yes, such a lively and fragrant beauty. How could she possibly be? He dared not think of that word. That charlatan must be talking nonsense. Get the hell out of here. Adrian cursed into the camera and cut off the connection directly. Stupid idiot, ruining my mood. The live stream continued, but Adrian was clearly distracted, his eyes constantly glancing in my direction. That night, Adrian, using the excuse that he was tired, uncharacteristically didn't go to Crystal, and slept alone in the master bedroom. In the dead of night, he probably thought about it more and more, and secretly slipped into my room. I pretended to be asleep, my breathing steady. He tiptoed to my dressing table, using the faint moonlight coming in through the window to examine the bottles and jars. Finally, he picked up the bottle of light yellow essence without a label. He unscrewed the cap and held it to his nose to smell it. A familiar, sweet and rotting smell entered his nostrils. This smell. Where had he smelled it before? That's right, last year he helped a master deal with some things, and the jar that contained the holy water had this same nauseating smell. What did that master say? This stuff could lock the soul and control the heart. Clang. He looked at the bed in horror. I was still lying quietly, the moonlight outlining the contours of my profile, my skin almost transparently white, my long eyelashes casting a small shadow under my eyes, looking pure and harmless. But just now he clearly saw. Was I seeing things? Yes, I must be seeing things. It must be that damn paranormal live streamer, and this bottle of mysterious essence that's causing me to hallucinate. How could Clara possibly be? Wife. Adrian's voice trembled, a hint of a sob in his voice as he tentatively called out. I slowly opened my eyes, a hazy daze clouding my vision, as if I'd just been awakened. I rubbed my eyes and propped myself up, the thin silk comforter slipping from my shoulders, revealing graceful collarbones and an expanse of snow-white skin. Husband. My voice was soft and sweet, with a hint of sleepiness. What are you doing here? Aren't you going to sleep? My eyes were clear, filled with just the right amount of confusion and concern, showing no sign of anything amiss. In fact, because I had just woken up, my cheeks were flushed with a light pink, making me look incredibly radiant. Adrian stared intently at my face, trying to find even the slightest trace of something inhuman. Nothing. There was nothing. My face was perfect, like a carefully sculpted work of art, every inch radiating youthful and vibrant allure. His fear, like a punctured balloon, hissed out, replaced by a sense of annoyed helplessness and the aftereffects of being frightened. Damn it, I really let myself get scared out of my wits. How could Clara be a ghost? Ghosts don't have such soft bodies, do they? Ghosts don't have such alluring eyes, do they? Nothing. Adrian forced himself to appear calm, speaking roughly, but his eyes avoided mine, gesturing randomly at the floor. You spilled that stuff of yours. What is that stuff? It stinks. Clean it up quickly. As if pursued by a ghost, he practically scrambled to his feet, stumbling out of my room and slamming the door shut. The moment the door closed, the gentle, innocent expression on my face slowly faded. I got out of bed barefoot, stepping over the cold floor, bypassing the puddle of foul-smelling liquid, and walked to the dressing table. The mirror reflected a beautiful, almost unnatural face, with smooth, tight skin, free of any wrinkles. I picked up another bottle of normal essence, poured it onto a cotton pad, and gently wiped away the stains splattered on the surface. My movements were calm and unhurried. Adrian probably would never guess that the mind control holy water he paid a fortune for was no longer the original bottle. As for what was now in it, it didn't matter. What mattered was that it worked. The next day, Adrian was noticeably distracted. During the live stream, he made several slip-ups, his eyes darting around, glancing at me from time to time. Even with Crystal clinging to him and acting coquettish, he seemed absent-minded. Adrian, what's wrong? Didn't you sleep well last night? Crystal pouted, pinching him in dissatisfaction. Adrian snapped back to reality, forcing a smile. No, it's nothing. Just a little tired. He subconsciously glanced at me again. I was walking over with a plate of sliced fruit in my hands, wearing an impeccably gentle smile. Honey, Crystal, have some fruit to replenish your vitamins. I placed the fruit plate in front of them, my fingers inadvertently brushing against the back of Adrian's hand. Adrian recoiled as if he'd been touched by ice, his face turning pale. I feigned surprise, batting my eyes with an innocent expression. Honey, what's wrong? Are my hands too cold? The viewers in the live stream immediately noticed this subtle moment. What's wrong with this scum? Is he feeling guilty? Did what the paranormal live streamer said come true last night? Haha. Who cares if wife Wanwan's hands are cold? I'll warm them up for you. Looking at the comments, Adrian's forehead broke out in sweat, and he quickly forced a smile. And no, it's nothing. It just itched a bit. To cover up his embarrassment, he pulled Crystal into his arms and gave her an exaggerated kiss in front of the camera. Come on, everyone, watch me and my little darling perform a love song duet. Although Crystal was unhappy with Adrian's perfunctory behavior, she perked up at the mention of performing and flirtatiously winked at the camera. I quietly retreated out of the camera's view, like a true background extra, watching Adrian's strained and flawed performance. Watching Crystal's face gradually lose its luster due to long-term consumption of my special soup. Watching my mother-in-law count the money from the live stream outside the camera's view, her eyebrows crinkling with delight. After the live stream, Adrian hastily left the house, using the excuse of discussing a collaboration. I knew he was going to find that master. Sure enough, when he returned that evening, he was carrying a small triangular amulet wrapped in talisman paper. As soon as he walked in the door, He secretly stuffed the amulet into his inner pocket, and then avoided my gaze with flickering eyes. The master said that I've been afflicted by petty people lately, and wearing this will make everything all right. He seemed to be talking to himself, but also warning me. I pretended not to notice, continuing to serve him gently and considerately with dinner and a bath. That night, he unusually didn't go to Crystal's room, but slept in the master bedroom, clutching the amulet tightly in his hand. In the following days, Adrian was noticeably more well-behaved. He wore the amulet next to his skin, refusing to take it off even when he showered. During the live stream, he still held Crystal and said those greasy love words, but his eyes would always involuntarily drift towards me, filled with a sense of scrutiny and subtle fear. I knew what he was afraid of. The spilled essence that night, and the midnight bells that were mentioned, were like two thorns that had pricked into his heart. I needed to let him pull out this thorn, and then replace it with another, piercing him even deeper. The opportunity soon came. This day, Adrian started to play Truth or Dare, to generate topic during the live stream. The loser had to answer the most sharp questions that the audience wrote. Unfortunately, or fortunately, he lost. The audience instantly screen spammed one question. Scumbag. How exactly did your ex-wife Eliza die? Did you kill her? This question was like a bomb that exploded directly in the live stream. Adrian's face turned ashen in an instant. Not even his thick foundation could cover it up. His lips trembled, and he looked around frantically, finally looking pleadingly towards his mother-in-law and Crystal. His mother-in-law reacted quickly, immediately squeezing into the camera, placing her hands on her hips and spat. That jinx was short-lived, killing her parents, and finally falling off a cliff and killing herself. How does it have anything to do with my Adrian? You black-hearted people, stop slandering us here. Crystal also quickly chimed in, her voice shrill and sharp. That old hag didn't have the fortune. It's her fault that she died. My Adrian now has me and he is very happy now. The more excited and reckless they became, the more viciously the audience cursed. Damn. Are this family even human? They still talk like this after someone dies. Call the police. We must call the police to investigate it. Eliza died without clear explanation. There must be a ghost. Adrian was sweating profusely from being cursed at, and it looked like he was about to lose it. Just then, I was carrying a pot of freshly brewed soothing tea, quietly walking to him and gently pouring him a cup. Honey, drink some tea to calm your nerves. My voice was as gentle as a feather brushing past. Don't be angry, it's not worth getting upset for those irrelevant people. I raised my eyes and looked at the camera, my eyes slightly red-rimmed, filled with an appropriate hint of grievance and resilience. Everyone, please stop cursing my husband and mother-in-law, Sister Eliza. She was indeed unfortunate, and an accident happened. We are all very sad. Let the past be the past. Now I just want to take good care of my husband in this family, so that Sister Eliza can rest in peace in the netherworld. My voice was not loud, but it clearly spread throughout the live stream. In an instant, the direction of the comments subtly changed. Damn. This new wife is too generous, right? Repaying evil with kindness. In contrast, the scumbag and his mother are simply scum. But, why does she sound so strange? +1, it feels like it is passive-aggressive tea. Adrian looked at me in disbelief, his eyes complex. He probably didn't expect that I would stand up for him at this time, and put my posture so low. His mother-in-law was also stunned, and then caught a lifeline, quickly following my words and said, Yes. It's Clara who is sensible. That Eliza just fell to her death by herself. It has nothing to do with us. Clara is the lucky star of our Sioux family. Crystal glared at me, angry, but dared not say anything. This livestream storm was resolved by my calm act. The look in Adrian's eyes shifted, less fear and more gratitude, and an unspeakable dependence. After the livestream, Adrian exceptionally didn't go to Crystal, but followed me into the kitchen. Clara today. Thank you. He rubbed his hands, a little nervous. I was turned my back to him, washing the tea set, my voice still gentle. Honey, why are you being so polite to me? We are a family. I paused, my voice with a hint of subtle worry. What the paranormal streamer said, and those rumors on the internet. I'm a little worried. Honey, How exactly did Sister Eliza die in the accident? Did she really fall off the cliff? Adrian's body stiffened abruptly. Only the sound of rushing water remained in the kitchen. After a long while he said dryly, It was an accident. That day she argued with me and ran out on her own. It was raining and the ground was slippery. I responded softly, turned off the faucet, turned around, carefully wiped the water droplets from my hands with a clean towel, looked up at him, my eyes pure and harmless. So, were you the only one there at the time? Were there any witnesses? What did the police say later? My questions came one after another, seemingly concerned, but like tiny hammers, striking Adrian's most vulnerable nerves. His face began to pale again, his eyes darting around, avoiding my gaze. It's been so long. The police already closed the case. Clara, don't ask about these things, it's bad luck. He almost fled. Watching his hurried figure, I slowly dried the last finger. Adrian, what are you panicking about? Are you afraid I'll find out the truth, or are you afraid Eliza will come back to haunt you? Life seemed to return to calm. Adrian's live streams were still popular. He enjoyed the fame and fortune brought by the Black and Red, and seemed to gradually forget the horror of that night, and the warnings of the ghost-hunting streamer. Under my gentle offensive, he became increasingly distant from Crystal, and even began to subconsciously imitate some of my little habits, such as having a cup of soothing tea that I made myself before going to bed. Crystal couldn't sit still any longer. She began to act up in all sorts of ways, deliberately embarrassing me during the live streams, ordering me to do this and that, and even accidentally splashing scalding hot tea on my hand. Each time, I was submissive and endured everything, acting incredibly tolerant. If I got burned, I would silently rinse it with cold water, and then continue to serve them with a smile. My humility and tenacity won the sympathy of some of the audience in the live stream, and made Crystal seem even more hateful. In private, Crystal's eyes were filled with resentment when she looked at me. She seemed to realize that Adrian's heart was gradually drifting away from her. One day, Adrian went out for a social engagement, and my mother-in-law went to dance in the square. Only Crystal and I were at home. She finally tore off her mask and blocked me in the bathroom. Clara, stop pretending. Her eyes, with expertly applied eye makeup, blazed with anger. Don't think I don't know what you're planning. Want to take Gigi all to yourself? Dream on. I lowered my head, looking at the back of my hand, which she had just accidentally stepped on, leaving a clear red mark. I gently blew on it, my tone calm. Crystal Mimi, I don't understand what you're saying. Don't understand? Crystal sneered, reaching out to push me hard. Let me tell you, Gigi can't live without me. He'll get tired of a block of wood like you sooner or later. If you know what's good for you, get out of here. I stumbled from her push, my back hitting the cold tile wall, making a dull thud. It hurt a lot, but my face remained expressionless. I just looked up, watching her quietly. The bathroom wasn't very well lit, and the mirror reflected our two figures. Crystal was fierce and aggressive, while I was pale, quiet, and my eyes were unfathomable. For some reason, Crystal felt a little uneasy from my gaze. She held on to her momentum, cursing. What are you looking at? If you keep looking, do you believe I'll have Gigi kick you out? I suddenly smiled. The curve of the corners of my mouth was extremely standard, but there was no warmth in it. Crystal Mimi, I said softly, my voice echoing in the narrow space. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Do you feel dizzy, and is your hair falling out badly? Crystal's face changed drastically. She had indeed been bothered by these symptoms recently, and thought it was from staying up late for live streams. None of your business, she roared, putting on a brave front. It's nothing. I took a step forward, getting closer to her, lowering my voice even further, with a strange kind of bewitchment. I just want to remind you, Mimi, that some things, even if you snatch them, you can't necessarily control them. Especially things that have been used by others, things that have picked up bad luck. My gaze intentionally swept over the diamond necklace Adrian gave her around her neck, and then slowly moved to her slightly haggard face, which looked tired from lack of sleep. What nonsense are you talking about? Crystal screamed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, raising her hand to hit me. I gently and skillfully grabbed her wrist. My fingers were icy cold. Crystal shuddered, struggling to break free, but found that my strength was astonishing, that icy hand gripping her like an iron clamp. You. She looked at me in horror. I leaned close to her ear, and in a voice only we could hear, I said word by word, Mimi, if you walk too many dark paths, you'll always meet a ghost. Don't you think so? Crystal started to act strange. After the bathroom confrontation, she seemed like a different person. During live streams, she no longer tried so hard to please Adrian as before. Instead, she often seemed distracted, her eyes wandering. Several times she didn't even hear Adrian calling her. Her carefully groomed hair became frizzy, and thick foundation couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes and her gradually fading skin. She began to be suspicious and fearful. First, she said she always heard dripping water in the bathroom at night, keeping her awake, but every time Adrian impatiently went to check, the faucet was tightly shut. Later, she said that the jewelry on her dressing table seemed to have been touched, and one earring was missing. Although it was found under the bed the next day, she insisted that someone had been in her room. Adrian, it must be Clara. She's jealous of me. She wants to hurt me. Crystal grabbed Adrian's arm, her nails almost digging into his flesh, her voice shrill. Adrian was annoyed and flustered. The pressure of the live streams was high, the online abuse was constant, and he couldn't find peace at home. Looking at Crystal's face, which was rapidly withering due to anxiety and insomnia, and comparing it to my increasingly radiant and consistently gentle demeanor, the scales in his heart tilted more and more. Enough! Adrian violently shook off her hand, roaring, You're getting more and more neurotic every day. Clara is so honest. How could she touch your things? You're just messy and blaming others. Look at what you look like now. Can't you learn from Clara and be more well-behaved? Crystal was stunned by his roar, and then burst into tears of grievance. Adrian, you have no conscience. I did all this for you. For me? For my money, right? Adrian interrupted her thoughtlessly. Recently, Crystal had been trying to get money from him to buy bags and jewelry, and he had been holding in a lot of anger. I appeared at the right time with a fruit platter, gently persuading, Husband, don't be angry, Crystal Mimi may just be too tired lately. Crystal Mimi, come and eat some fruit. I specially added honey, it's soothing. My thoughtfulness and generosity further highlighted Crystal's unreasonable behavior. Adrian glared at Crystal with disgust, pulled me to sit on the sofa, and his tone softened. It's still Clara who is sensible. Crystal looked at us, her eyes overflowing with resentment. She bit her lip hard, stopped speaking, and turned and rushed back to her room. I knew that a crack had formed. All it needed was a little push. Several days later, late one night, a shrill scream pierced the tranquility of the villa. It was Crystal's voice. Adrian and my mother-in-law were startled awake and rushed over, cursing. I also got up, put on a coat, and followed quietly behind. The lights in Crystal's room were on. She was curled up in the corner of the bed, tightly wrapped in a blanket, trembling all over, her face as pale as paper, pointing in the direction of the window, crying incoherently. Ghost! There's a ghost! Outside the window. A white shadow floated past. Long hair. It's Eliza. Eliza is back. Adrian looked in the direction she was pointing. The night outside the window was pitch black, with only the shadows of trees swaying. He scratched his hair irritably. You must be going crazy from nightmares. What ghost? My mother-in-law also spat. Bad luck. What kind of mourning are you wailing about in the middle of the night? I stepped forward, gently comforting. Crystal Mimi, did you not close the window properly, and the wind blew the shadow of something? Don't scare yourself. I pretended to go to close the window. Just as I approached the window, Crystal seemed to see something extremely terrifying. Her pupils constricted sharply, and she screamed even more hysterically. Don't come over. Don't come over. Your hands. Why are your hands so cold? That day in the bathroom. You're not human. You're not Clara. As soon as she said these words, Adrian's and my mother-in-law's faces changed. Adrian suddenly looked at me. I stopped, standing by the window, moonlight shining through the glass, casting a long shadow behind me. I had an innocent and hurt expression on my face, reached out my hand, and said softly, Crystal Mimi, do you have a fever? My hands are cold because I got up in a hurry just now. Look, I have a shadow. How can I not be human? My shadow was clearly reflected on the floor, swaying slightly with my movements. Adrian breathed a sigh of relief, but his anger intensified. He felt that Crystal was deliberately trying to find fault, ruining his mood, and possibly affecting his live-streaming career. He rushed forward, grabbed Crystal from the bed and roared, "Lunatic! I think you're really crazy. Get out! Get out of here! Don't be hysterical here!" Crystal was dragged around roughly by Adrian, crying, struggling, her hair disheveled, looking like a madwoman. My mother-in-law not only didn't try to persuade them, but also helped her son scold. "I knew you weren't a well-behaved one. Troublemaker. Get out now." I watched this farce, and the corners of my mouth curled up slightly in the shadows. That day in the bathroom, I deliberately made my hands cold, and said those ambiguous words, which became the last straw that broke Crystal's nerve. Fear and suspicion are enough to collapse a guilty person. Crystal was ultimately kicked out of the house by Adrian in the dead of night, like throwing away trash. The majority of the branded bags and jewelry she brought were seized by Adrian and his mother, euphemistically called compensation for emotional distress. The house finally seemed quiet. Adrian seemed to have unloaded a heavy burden, and started to be high-spirited again. During his live streams, he more blatantly flaunted his control over me, even starting to fabricate stories about how I was devoted to him and couldn't live without him. The audience cursed even more fiercely, and his traffic was even higher. He seemed to have completely forgotten Crystal's miserable state, also forgotten the warnings of the supernatural live streamer, and forgotten how Eliza died. Only I knew that this quiet was just the illusion before a storm. Although Crystal had been driven away, the fear she left behind, like a virus, had quietly been implanted in Adrian and his mother's hearts. Especially his mother. She started to mutter from time to time that the feng shui of the house was bad, even secretly going to the temple to get talismans to paste on the door. And Adrian became increasingly dependent on me. He needed to drink the calming tea I made for him almost every night to fall asleep, and even started to actively let me manage some of his accounts. When he looked at me, his eyes not only contained possessiveness, but also a hint of near-morbid infatuation that even he himself didn't notice. He really seemed to believe that I was a lucky star, sent by heaven to save him and help him make money. That day, an unfamiliar number kept calling Adrian's phone. At first, he impatiently hung up, then the other party sent a text message. Adrian opened the text message, and after just one glance, his face instantly turned ashen, and his fingers were shaking. The text message was very short, only one sentence. "Adrian, I am Eliza's cousin. We found the diary that E left before the accident. There are some things about you we want to talk about." Adrian suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at me, as if wanting to find some flaws on my face. I was sitting on the sofa opposite him, lowering my head and focusing on arranging flowers. Sunlight shone through the gauze curtains onto my profile, soft and serene. I looked up and gave him a gentle smile. "Honey, who's that texting? You don't look so good." Adrian slammed the phone screen off, as if bitten by a venomous snake, and quickly stuffed it back into his pocket. His chest rose and fell sharply, a layer of fine cold sweat instantly seeping out on his forehead, his eyes darting around frantically, refusing to look at me. And nothing. His voice was dry and tight, almost a roar. Telemarketing calls. So annoying. The sunlight was good, illuminating the living room brightly, but I clearly saw his fingers trembling slightly uncontrollably. Diary. Eliza's diary. How could that woman who was docile and submissive, beaten half to death and not daring to say a word, write a diary? When did she write it? What did she write in it? Did she record the details of every time he hit her? Or did she record what happened on the cliff that night? No, impossible. Only the two of them were there that night. The rain was so heavy, the sky was so dark, he had confirmed that there was no one else around. She had already passed out at the time. How could she write a diary? It's a scam. It must be Eliza's poor relatives trying to extort money. Yes, that's it. Adrian frantically made excuses for himself in his heart, trying to suppress the fear that was about to burst through his chest. But his pale face and wandering eyes had already betrayed him. I put down the half-trimmed lily stem in my hand, stood up, and walked to his side with just the right amount of concern on my face, gently grasping his cold, trembling hand. Honey, why are your hands so cold? Are you feeling unwell? My palms were warm, and my tone was so gentle it could drip with water. Should I make you a bowl of ginger tea? My touch made Adrian shudder. He almost instinctively wanted to shake it off, but when his eyes met my concerned gaze, his movements froze. He looked at me, his eyes extremely complex, fear, suspicion, and even a hint of dependence that even he himself wasn't aware of, intertwined together. And no need. He took a deep breath, forcibly calmed down, and grabbed my wrist hard in return, the force almost crushing my bones, his eyes fixed on me, as if trying to find even the slightest flaw on my face. Clara, do you know Eliza's relatives? I frowned slightly, revealing a puzzled expression, and gently pulled my hand back, indicating that he was hurting me. Honey, you're hurting me. Eliza's relatives? How would I know them? When I was with you, Eliza had already. I sighed, my tone tinged with regret and sadness. Can't we just stop thinking about the past and live our lives well now? My reaction was flawless, natural and sincere. Adrian stared at me for several seconds, finally slowly letting go of my hand, and slumped back on the sofa as if exhausted, muttering, Yes. You don't know them. Live our lives well. He was talking to me, and also hypnotizing himself. However, the text message was like a poisonous thorn, deeply embedded in his heart. In the following days, Adrian was obviously absent-minded. He made frequent mistakes during the live streams, smiling foolishly at the camera, or suddenly falling into a stupor. The audience could all see that something was wrong with him, and the chat was full of questions. What's wrong with the scumbag? Is he being pinched by a ghost? Did the mistress run away? Heartbroken. I think he's done too many bad things and is being punished. He dared not easily hang up the phone from that number anymore, but secretly ran to the balcony or bathroom to answer it. Each time he came back, his face was even uglier than the last, and his temper became even more irritable, even yelling at his mother. His mother didn't understand why. She only assumed that her son was in a bad mood because Crystal had left, so she tried every means to stew tonics for him, muttering, Son, don't think about that jinx anymore. Mom thinks Clara is pretty good, big hips, good for bearing children, much better than that Eliza. Adrian jumped up as if pricked by a needle when he heard the name Eliza. Don't mention her. No one is allowed to mention her in the future. His mother was stunned by his yelling and shut her mouth sheepishly. I knew that the time was almost ripe. The seed of fear had taken root and sprouted, and was about to break through the soil. That night, Adrian was secretly answering the phone on the balcony again. I walked over with a glass of hot milk and vaguely heard his low roars suppressing anger and fear. How much money? Name your price. But I'm warning you, don't try to play any tricks. If I find out you're scamming me. He suddenly saw me and immediately hung up the phone, squeezing out an extremely ugly smile on his face. Clara, what are you doing here? I saw that you haven't been sleeping well lately, so I warmed up a glass of milk for you. I handed him the milk, my gaze sweeping over his phone screen, which was still lit, and asked as if casually, Honey, have you encountered some trouble? You always seem restless lately. If you need money, I have some. No. It's a small matter, I can handle it. Adrian hurriedly interrupted me, took the milk, and took a big gulp without even looking at it, as if only this could suppress the panic in his heart. He pulled me back to the living room, sitting close to me as if seeking comfort, and started to ramble about the live streaming, the future plans, and the desire to earn more money so I could live a good life. I leaned against him, listening obediently, playing with the buttons of his pajamas with my fingers, until his voice gradually lowered, his breathing became steady, as if he had fallen asleep. I gently lifted my head and looked at his brows, still tightly furrowed even in his sleep, and his nervously twitching eyelids. Then, I picked up his phone, which he had casually placed on the coffee table. I had already accidentally seen his phone password long ago. The screen lit up, and the latest text message was still on the interface. Adrian, we have made many copies of the diary. Meet us at the West Mountain Cemetery at Eliza's tombstone at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. You are only allowed to come alone. Otherwise, we will directly hand over the diary to the police and the media. You know what's written inside. West Mountain Cemetery. In front of Eliza's tombstone. What a good place. I deleted the text message and call history, and gently placed the phone back in its place. The next day, Adrian was restless all day. Just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he made the excuse that he had an urgent matter at the company and hurried out in his car. I knew where he went. I didn't follow. Some dramas, you don't need to watch them with your own eyes to know the ending. I sat in the spacious and bright living room at home, slowly arranging the unfinished bouquet of lilies. Sunlight shone through the French windows, casting mottled shadows on the floor. His mother came over, looked at my hand, and clicked her tongue in praise. Clara, you're really skillful. You've arranged these flowers so beautifully. She had become increasingly satisfied with me recently, feeling that I had driven away Crystal and taken care of her son so well. I looked up and gave her a sweet and harmless smile. Mom, I'm glad you like it. Time passed minute by minute. About 2 hours later, the harsh sound of a car braking sharply came from outside the door, followed by staggering footsteps. The door was slammed open. Adrian stood at the door, his face a kind of indescribable deathly gray, his eyes hollow, the depths of his pupils filled with an undisguised, enormous terror. He was soaked in sweat, his clothes wrinkled and covered with grass clippings and mud, as if he had just crawled out of some muddy pit. When he saw me, it was as if he had seen a ghost, a strange sound coming from his throat, retreating again and again, almost tripping over the threshold. Honey, what's wrong with you? I put down the flowers and went to greet him with a look of surprise and concern. Don't come over. Adrian screamed, his voice hoarse and distorted. You, don't come over. His mother also came over when she heard the sound, and was frightened when she saw her son like this. Adrian, what's wrong with you? What happened? Adrian looked at me, then at his mother, his lips trembling, wanting to say something, but not a single word came out. Only heavy, terrified breathing echoed in the living room. His gaze finally settled on my face, his eyes filled with the ultimate fear and a kind of unbelievable incredulity, as if he had seen a ghost. I knew he went to West Mountain Cemetery. He must have seen the surprise I had meticulously prepared for him. I just didn't know if it was Eliza's quiet gaze from her black and white photo on the tombstone that frightened him, or if it was the cousin showing him a key passage from a certain page of the diary that scattered his soul more. Or perhaps it was the combined effect of both? I stood there, tilting my head slightly, a gentle, concerned smile still on my face, looking at him with pure eyes. Honey, I asked softly, my voice as gentle as a feather, where did you go? What happened to you? Adrian was as if his bones had been removed, slumped on the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling, his body drenched in cold sweat, twitching uncontrollably from time to time. He didn't even touch the hot water his mother-in-law brought, just neurotically muttering, "It's fake. It's all fake. They're lying to me." But his soul-scattered appearance couldn't deceive anyone. His mother was anxiously running around in circles, insisting that it was Eliza's lingering spirit that had collided with her son in the cemetery, clamoring to find an even more powerful master to exorcise him. I sat obediently beside them, holding a hot towel, gently wiping the cold sweat from Adrian's forehead. When my fingertips touched his cold skin, he shuddered violently, staring at me with terrified eyes, a gurgling sound coming from his throat. Honey, don't be afraid, it's okay, it's all over. My voice was soft, like comforting a frightened child. Did you encounter something unclean at the cemetery? Mom is right, we need to have someone take a look. Adrian stared at me intently, his eyes filled with extreme confusion and fear. He opened his mouth, as if to say something, but in the end he just closed his eyes dejectedly, turned his head to the side, and curled up. He didn't dare to say it. How could he say it? Would he tell his mother that at Eliza's tombstone, he hadn't seen any cousin at all? Only an empty cemetery and a cold tombstone? Would he tell his mother that the so-called cousin had only blackmailed him over the phone, and when he arrived he only found a copy of a diary, wrapped in a plastic bag and pressed against the tombstone? And the last page of that diary clearly read, X month X day rainy. Adrian, if I unfortunately have an accident, it definitely won't be an accident. He hit me again today, saying he's going to throw me off the cliff. I secretly recorded it and hid it in The words that followed were blurred by rainwater, but the key information was enough to terrify Adrian. A recording? She actually made a recording? Where did she hide it? This became a sword hanging over Adrian's head, not knowing when it would fall. Compared to ghosts, this tangible evidence that could send him to prison terrified him even more. Yes. Hire a master. We must hire one. Adrian seemed to have grasped a lifeline, suddenly sat up, grabbed his mother's hand, and said incoherently, "A powerful one. No matter how much it costs. We must drive away the unclean thing." His mother acted quickly, and didn't know where she found a Master Wallace, wearing a Taoist robe and a goatee. This Taoist priest walked around the house, holding a compass in his hand, chanting incantations, and finally stopped in the center of the living room, pointing at me and saying, "This woman has a peculiar face, as if she is entangled by yin objects, which may clash with the yang energy of the house. She needs to be purified with a ritual, and then a spiritual talisman must be placed in the house to ward off evil." Adrian and his mother were as if they had heard a sacred decree, and hurriedly agreed, sealing red envelopes and preparing incense and sacrificial offerings. On the day of the ritual, the house was filled with smoke, gongs, and drums. Master Wallace danced with a peachwood sword, sprinkling talisman water around me. I kept my head down throughout the entire process, cooperating by making a shrinking, fearful appearance, my body trembling slightly. Adrian stared at me intently, and when he saw my fearful appearance, the fear in his eyes seemed to lessen, replaced by a twisted sense of control. "Look, she's still afraid. She can still be controlled." After the ritual, Master Wallace handed Adrian a yellow talisman folded into a triangle, instructing him to stick it above the front door to ensure the peace of the house and prevent evil spirits from entering. Adrian treasured it as if it were a precious treasure, personally brought a ladder, and carefully pasted the talisman onto the door. The moment he pasted the talisman, he breathed a long sigh of relief, as if he had really blocked something terrible outside the door. He turned around, and the look in his eyes when he looked at me returned to that usual sense of charity and control, and he even reached out to touch my face. "Clara, don't be afraid, with the Heavenly Master's talisman here, everything will be fine from now on." I moved slightly to avoid his hand, raised my eyes, and looked timidly at the new yellow talisman on the door, asking softly, "Honey, is it really safe with this on?" "Of course." Adrian puffed out his chest, his tone certain. "That's good." I lowered my head, revealing a relieved, docile smile. "Safe. Adrian, you'll soon find out that the guardian you personally invited might turn into a death warrant." That night, after sticking the talisman on the door, Adrian seemed to have regained some confidence, and even started streaming again. He bragged to the camera about how he had hired a master to resolve the curse of the petty person, and how harmonious and peaceful the family was now. His mother also chimed in, saying how powerful the master was. I continued to play the role of a docile wife, serving tea and water, but occasionally, in corners out of the camera's view, I would look up at the yellow talisman on the door. Late at night, Adrian slept soundly because he had solved the problem in his mind. I quietly walked to the front door. Under the moonlight, the yellow talisman was quietly pasted there. I reached out my fingertips gently brushing over the twisted patterns drawn in cinnabar on the talisman paper. This talisman is a bit interesting. It's not a traditional talisman for suppressing evil spirits and ensuring peace. The aura it exudes carries a sinister, money-grabbing intent. The person who drew the talisman had impure intentions. This talisman not only cannot ward off evil, but in the long run, it may also absorb the weak vitality of the house and feed it back to the person who drew the talisman. This Master Wallace is a liar, and a crooked one at that. Perfect. I withdrew my hand, not touching the talisman. Leaving it there might be more useful. Early the next morning, his mother woke up complaining of back pain, saying that she was exhausted from the ritual yesterday. Adrian also felt a little lethargic, yawning constantly. I thoughtfully prepared a hearty breakfast for them and said softly, "Maybe the Heavenly Master's ritual consumed some vital energy. It's good to replenish it." Adrian did not suspect anything, but felt that I was more considerate. However, strange things began to happen one after another. First, the gold ring that his mother had placed in the Buddhist shrine disappeared. After searching for a long time, it was finally found at the bottom of the trash can, but it was already twisted and deformed, as if something had stepped on it forcefully. Then, the expensive microphone that Adrian used for streaming suddenly malfunctioned, emitting an ear-piercing electrical noise that could not be fixed no matter how much he tried. He replaced it with a new one, but the same problem occurred again in a few days. The family always heard faint crying in the middle of the night, like a woman's or a child's. Adrian mustered up his courage to get up and check, but found nothing, only the yellow talisman on the door swaying slightly in the night breeze. Each time a strange thing happened, Adrian and his mother would look at the talisman on the door in horror, and then reassure themselves, those unclean things must be unwilling and are making their last struggle. With the Heavenly Master's talisman here, they can't get in. Instead, they became more and more dependent on me, as if I were the only clean thing in this house, the only thing that could bring them a sense of security. Adrian even began to entrust me with some important things, such as bank cards and safe deposit box keys. The morbid infatuation in his eyes when he looked at me grew deeper and deeper. "Clara, you're the only one who's truly sincere to me." He took my hand, his tone with an abnormal excitement. "After this storm passes, we'll get married and have a grand wedding. Let everyone see what a great wife Adrian married." I smiled and nodded, my eyes as gentle as water. "Live a good life? Adrian, your days are numbered." A turning point came on a weekend afternoon. The doorbell rang urgently. Looking through the peephole, I saw that it was Crystal, who had been kicked out of the house before. She was skin and bones, wearing an old out-of-season trench coat. Her hair was dry and yellow, and her eyes were vacant. She didn't have a trace of her former alluring charm. As soon as she entered, she knelt on the ground with a thud and hugged Adrian's leg, wailing, "Adrian, brother Adrian. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me." She cried her heart out. "I haven't had a single good day since I left you. I lost my job, I ran out of money, and I keep having nightmares. Adrian, please take me in. I don't want anything. I'll just be a nanny and serve you." Adrian frowned, wanting to kick her away with a look of disgust. He could barely take care of himself, let alone worry about this ex-girlfriend. My mother-in-law cursed directly. "Get out. Jinx. You still have the nerve to come back." Looking at the disheveled Crystal on the ground, I felt nothing. There must be something hateful about pitiful people. Her situation today is nothing but self-inflicted. But her return is perfectly timed. I stepped forward, gently helped Crystal up, took out a tissue to wipe away her tears, and said softly to Adrian and my mother-in-law, "Honey, Mom, Crystal knows she was wrong too. Look at her now, she's quite pitiful. The world outside is chaotic and she's just a girl. Why don't we let her stay for now? Anyway, there are plenty of empty rooms in the house." Adrian and my mother-in-law looked at me in surprise, seemingly not expecting me to plead for Crystal. Crystal was also stunned, raising her tearful face and looking at me in disbelief. I smiled at her with a tolerant and slightly compassionate expression. "Crystal, just settle in here from now on. Let the past be the past." Adrian looked at me, then at the weeping Crystal, and waved his hand irritably. All right. Clara said so you can stay for now. But don't even think about playing any more tricks. Otherwise, I won't spare you." Crystal thanked him profusely, her gaze toward me extremely complex, with gratitude, confusion, and a hint of barely perceptible fear. She probably would never understand why I wanted to help her. The reason is simple. A collapsing Crystal, an Adrian tormented by fear, a sick mother-in-law, plus me, the seemingly harmless virtuous wife. The cast of characters is finally complete for this play. Crystal's return was like a drop of cold water into a pot of boiling oil. She was trembling, rushing to do chores, trying to make up for her mistakes with diligence. But Adrian and my mother-in-law showed her no kindness, often scolding and beating her. And Crystal's gaze towards me became increasingly strange. She seemed to have discovered that only around me in this house was it safe. There were always strange noises coming from Adrian's and my mother-in-law's rooms at night. My mother-in-law's painkillers often disappeared, and Adrian's tonics made him even weaker. Only the guest room I stayed in, and the areas I frequented were calm. She began to intentionally or unintentionally approach me, helping me with housework, arranging flowers with me, and even taking the initiative to help me bring Adrian his calming tea. I knew what she was thinking. She was observing, testing. She wanted to find the source of the abnormality in this house, or rather, she wanted to confirm whether I was the abnormality. I didn't stop her, nor did I expose her. Occasionally, I would accidentally let my fingertips brush against the rim of the cup when she brought the tea. When she got close, I would let her feel the unusual, faint chill emanating from me. Looking at her fingers, which were feigning composure but trembling slightly, and looking at the growing suspicion in her eyes, I knew that her puzzle piece was about to be placed in the right position. That night, Adrian received a phone call from the platform operator, saying that his recent data had declined sharply, there was too much negative publicity, and if he didn't find a way to recover, his traffic might be restricted or even his account blocked. After hanging up, Adrian flew into a rage and smashed his phone hard on the ground. Damn it. It's all those stupid netizens' fault. And Eliza, that dead ghost, haunting me. He paced back and forth in the living room like a trapped beast, his eyes finally landing on me, who had been sitting quietly on the sofa, his expression suddenly becoming crazed and paranoid. No, I can't just end like this. He rushed over, grabbed my shoulders, his strength frighteningly strong. Clara, tomorrow we'll do a big live stream. Honey, what are you going to live stream? I asked obediently. Adrian's eyes gleamed with an almost pathological light, and he said, word by word, we'll live stream exorcism. Right here in this house. I'm going to show everyone that all the ghosts and gods are bullshit in front of Adrian. I'm going to completely break this bad luck. My mother-in-law's eyes lit up at the side, clapping her hands repeatedly. Good. My son is ambitious. That's the way to do it. Crystal, on the other hand, was pale with fright, her lips trembling, wanting to say something but not daring to. I raised my head, looked at Adrian's face distorted with excitement, and slowly revealed an extremely gentle smile. Okay, honey. I'll listen to you. Adrian invested an unprecedented amount of enthusiasm, or rather, a desperate madness in this exorcism livestream. He spent a lot of money redecorating the livestream room, replacing the background with a glaring crimson curtain. The lights were stark white, and eerie background music was playing on a loop in the speakers. He even somehow managed to get an even more exaggerated set of ritual implements. A copper coin sword, a soul-calling bell, and a stack of yellow paper with distorted spells drawn on it. Family. Tonight. Right here. I, Adrian, am going to get rid of all the dirty things in this house in front of all of you. From the start of the live stream, Adrian was roaring at the camera, his eyeballs bloodshot with excitement and prolonged weakness, his cheekbones high, looking scarier than a ghost. My mother-in-law was wearing an ill-fitting Taoist robe, knocking on a wooden fish beside him, muttering something under her breath, but the sound of the wooden fish was weak, and her face was ashen under the stark white light. Crystal was ordered to stay within camera range, and she huddled in a corner of the chair, hugging herself tightly, her body trembling constantly, her eyes darting around in fear, especially when she looked at the yellow talisman on the door and at me, her fear almost overflowing. The comments were scrolling by quickly, with some people watching the fun, some cursing him for courting death, and a few people noticing something was wrong. Why is this scumbag so skinny? His mom looks like she's about to die too. That mistress is scared shitless, haha. Am I the only one who feels like the atmosphere in this livestream room is eerily scary? Where's Wanwan wife? Let my wife come out and cleanse my eyes. Clara, come here. Adrian shouted. I responded and walked into the stark white circle of light from off camera. I was still wearing an elegant home outfit, with a gentle and docile expression on my face, completely out of tune with the surrounding frenzied and bizarre atmosphere. My appearance was like a breath of fresh air, instantly calming down the agitated comments. My wife is so healing. Wanwan, don't be afraid, come to mommy. Adrian pulled me to his side, his arm tightly around my waist, showing off to the camera. Look, this is my wife. All the ghosts and monsters have to stand at attention when they see her. With her, I'm not afraid of anything. His movements were possessive, but his tone revealed a feigned bravado. I snuggled into his arms, raised my head, and gave him a completely trusting, sweet smile. My husband is the best. Adrian seemed to draw some courage from me. He grabbed the copper coin sword, waved it around a few times, shook the soul-calling bell, and chanted some incoherent incantations, his movements comical and embarrassed. My mother-in-law cooperated by raising the volume of her chanting, knocking the wooden fish loudly. In the midst of this chaos, a sudden change occurred. The fill light used for the livestream suddenly made a crackling sound, the tube exploded violently, and fragments splattered everywhere. The livestream room instantly darkened by half, leaving only the crimson lights in the background, reflecting everyone's faces like demons. Ah! Crystal was the first to scream, rolling off the chair onto the ground. The sound of my mother-in-law's wooden fish stopped abruptly, and she opened her mouth in horror. Adrian's movements of waving the copper coin sword froze in mid-air, and the frenzy on his face was instantly replaced by fear. The comments exploded directly. Holy shit! Here it comes. Something really happened. The scumbag is playing with fire and burning himself. Protect my Wanwan. In the chaos, the faint sound of a woman's cry clearly spread throughout the live stream through the microphone. The cry was desolate and mournful, sometimes near, sometimes far, as if it was ringing in everyone's ears. It's Eliza. It's her. She's back. Crystal hugged her head, curled up on the ground, and cried hysterically. I heard it. It's her voice. Shut up. Adrian's face was as white as paper, and he scolded sternly, but the hand holding the copper coin sword was trembling violently. At this moment, something even more terrifying happened. All the lights in the livestream room began to flicker wildly, erratically. In the rapidly switching light, sharp-eyed viewers discovered in horror. In the livestream footage, besides Adrian, my mother-in-law, the collapsed Crystal, and me in the darkest corner of the living room, there was a vague, shadowy figure of a woman in white standing there, since who knows when. Her head was lowered, her long hair disheveled, and she was standing there quietly. Ghost. There's a ghost. In the corner. I saw it too. The white-clothed ghost. Bullet screen protection. Call the police. Call the police quickly. Adrian and his mother-in-law also saw the bullet comments, and both turned their heads in horror to look at that corner. The light suddenly flashed brightly again, and the corner was empty, with nothing there. But fear was already like ice water, pouring over their entire bodies. It's fake. It's all fake. It's special effects. Adrian roared at the camera in a panic, trying to salvage the situation, but his voice was shaking uncontrollably and had no persuasiveness. Suddenly, the always quiet me let out a suppressed, painful groan. I covered my head, my body swayed slightly, and my face became abnormally pale in the flickering light. Clara, what's wrong? Adrian subconsciously supported me. I raised my head, and my eyes were no longer the usual gentle and pure, but filled with a strange, enormous fear and pain, and tears welled up without warning. In a crying, slightly hoarse voice that didn't belong to Clara at all, I trembled and said, Adrian, I'm in so much pain. Below the cliff. It's so cold. The water is so icy. Why did you push me? Why? These words were like a bolt from the blue, exploding in Adrian's ears. Cliff. Cold water. Pushed her. These keywords were only known to him and the real Eliza. That night, he pushed the unconscious Eliza off the cliff, and there was indeed an icy river at the bottom of the cliff. You. Who are you? Who exactly are you? Adrian pushed me away as if burned, pointing at me in extreme horror, his voice twisted and deformed. I staggered a few steps from his push and fell to the ground, raising my tearful face and looking at him with eyes that mixed Eliza's resentment and Clara's weakness, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm Eliza. Darling. Don't you recognize me? You pushed me down. I hate you so much. The signal in the live broadcast room became extremely unstable at this moment. The picture distorted and lagged frantically, but the conversation between me and Adrian, especially the sentence, I'm Eliza, and you push me down, was transmitted with unusual clarity. The bullet screen went completely crazy. The server nearly crashed. Holy crap! Body possession. The scumbag's murder of his wife is confirmed. Call the police. Record the screen quickly. This is evidence. Wanwan is possessed? I knew something was wrong with her. Adrian completely collapsed. He looked at me sitting on the ground, crying with a rain of tears but exuding a sinister chill, at the rolling bullet screen accusing him of murder, at the mother-in-law who was frightened silly and Crystal who had already fainted to the side, and his last mental defense line completely collapsed. Ghost. There's a ghost. He let out an inhuman howl, no longer caring about face, the live broadcast, anything, scrambling to the door, wanting to escape this terrifying place. The mother-in-law also reacted, screaming and following her son out. The live broadcast camera fell to the ground, pointing at the empty living room that was still flashing with eerie red light, and Crystal, who was collapsed on the ground, and me, who was slowly getting up from the ground. I wiped the tears from my face, looked at the backs of the mother and son fleeing in panic, looked at the messy live broadcast room, and looked at the shocked, frightened, and angry comments on the screen. The corners of my mouth slowly curved into an icy, bone-chilling smile. Adrian, the game is over. Your hell has only just begun. In the overturned live broadcast mobile phone screen, the bullet screen scrolled at an explosive speed, almost covering the distorted and lagging picture. The server couldn't withstand this tsunami-like traffic and finally blacked out completely. The last scene before the signal was cut off was me falling to the ground, using Eliza's voice to weep about the coldness under the cliff, and Adrian's face distorted by extreme fear. The live broadcast was cut off, but the storm on the internet had only just begun. Recorded clips spread like viruses, and the hashtags Adrian kills his wife, and seeing ghosts on live broadcast exploded on trending searches. The house was dead silent. Expensive live broadcast equipment was scattered all over the floor, and the scarlet curtain was tilted, like a solidified blood stain. Crystal was still collapsed in the corner, her eyes wide open, saliva running down the corners of her mouth, already frightened silly. The mother-in-law, on the other hand, was like a soul was drawn away, collapsed on the sofa, her lips trembling, only able to repeatedly mutter, sin. A wronged soul seeking revenge. And Adrian? He stood stiffly in the center of the living room like a clay sculpture struck by lightning, his face a deathly gray. Sweat soaked his silk pajamas, sticking tightly to his trembling body. His eyes were hollow, his pupils dilated, staring straight at the place where I had just fallen, as if he could still see the shadow crying, I'm Eliza. I had already returned to normal, and was now kneeling obediently on the ground, cleaning up the overturned fruit plate and water glass. My movements were gentle, my expression gentle and demure, as if that terrifying scene had never happened. Husband. I raised my head, my voice carrying a hint of just the right timidity and worry, my eyes slightly red. Are you okay? Just now, I don't know what happened, it's like I suddenly wasn't myself. Adrian suddenly shuddered, as if burned by my voice, staggering back 2 steps, his back slammed heavily against the cold wall. He looked at me in horror, his eyes filled with extreme confusion and fear. You don't come over, he said in a hoarse voice, almost crying. Husband, I'm Clara. I showed a hurt expression, tears welling up in my eyes. Are you mistaking me for Eliza? Those words just now so scary. How could I say those words? As I spoke, I slowly stood up, trying to approach him. Stop. I told you to stop. Adrian screamed, grabbing a heavy ashtray from the coffee table at random, pointing it at me trembling. Are you Clara? Or Eliza, that cheap ghost? Husband, how can you say that about Eliza? I stopped, lowering my head in grievance, my shoulders twitching slightly as if crying, but a ghostly voice floated out. She died so tragically. Below the cliff, it's so dark and cold, the water is so icy. She kept calling your name. Shut up. Shut up. Ah. Adrian completely collapsed, covering his ears and shaking his head frantically, the ashtray falling to the ground with a clang. No cliff. No water. You're talking nonsense. Nonsense. The mother-in-law was awakened by her son's screams and scrambled over to hug Adrian. Son. My son. Don't scare Mom. She turned to glare at me with resentful eyes. It's all you jinx. Ever since you came, there hasn't been a moment of peace in the house. You brought the unclean things here. I raised my tearful eyes and looked at the mother-in-law pitifully. Mom, how can you say that about me? I've been doing my best to serve you, how could I? It's you. The mother-in-law seemed to have found an outlet for her anger, pointing at my nose and scolding. "Look at your eyes. Cold as ice. Doesn't look like a living person at all. You're possessed." "Possessed?" Adrian murmured, repeating these 3 words, the fear in his eyes almost overflowing. He stared at me intently, as if trying to see another face, the one he had personally buried, from my perfect face. In the following days, Adrian completely fell into madness and extreme fear. He didn't dare to go out, didn't dare to do live broadcasts, and didn't even dare to draw the curtains. He turned on all the lights in the house, keeping them on all night, as if the light could dispel the invisible ghosts. He became suspicious of everything. When I picked up food for him at the table, he would suddenly pull his hand back, watching the chopsticks vigilantly, as if they were coated with poison. At night, he didn't dare to sleep alone, and insisted that his mother-in-law sleep on the floor in his room. But even so, he would often wake up screaming in the middle of the night, saying that he saw white shadows floating outside the window, or that he heard a woman crying. His spirit quickly declined, his eye sockets were sunken, his beard was unkempt, and he was so thin that he looked more like a ghost than a person. And I was still playing the role of the perfect wife. He didn't dare to eat anything I had touched, so I would prepare the food and put it on the table, watching him from afar. He was afraid of me getting close, so I always kept a few steps away from him, looking at him with eyes that mixed worry, grievance, and a faint, indescribable eeriness. I would also accidentally create some small coincidences. For example, when he was staring blankly at the window, a white plastic bag would suddenly float past in the distance, shaped like a blurry human figure. For example, when he was tossing and turning at night, I would hum a sad old song that Eliza had liked the most in the next room in a very low voice. These subtle stimuli were like blunt knives, repeatedly cutting Adrian's already fragile nerves. He began to hallucinate. Sometimes he would talk to empty corners, and sometimes he would suddenly kneel down and kowtow for mercy. The so-called experts invited by the mother-in-law were driven out by him. He didn't believe anyone, only felt that the whole world was filled with Eliza's resentment. The time was almost ripe. That night, it was raining heavily, with thunder and lightning. The wind howled, banging against the windows as if countless hands were beating against them. This kind of weather was perfect for ghosts to appear. Adrian huddled on the sofa, wrapped in a thick blanket, revealing only a pair of terrified eyes. The mother-in-law was dozing off beside him. I carried a cup of hot water and slowly walked over. "Husband, drink some water." My voice sounded particularly gentle and clear in the sound of the wind and rain. Adrian looked up sharply like a startled rabbit. I didn't get close, but just put the water cup on the coffee table and stepped back, standing at the intersection of light and shadow. A flash of lightning flashed across the window, instantly illuminating my face, pale, calm, my eyes unfathomable. "Husband." I looked at him, my voice still gentle, but with an undeniable power. "Eliza." "She came to me in a dream." Adrian's body trembled violently. "She said." I paused, my eyes sweeping over his pale face. When she fell, her head hit a sharp rock. It hurt a lot. But what hurt more was her heart. She said she couldn't understand why you hated her so much, why you had to kill her. Adrian's mental defenses completely collapsed. He collapsed on the floor like a heap of mud, clutching his head, but this time, instead of remorseful wails, he emitted a scream mixed with fear, despair, and some twisted madness. "Yes, I killed her. So what?" He suddenly raised his head, his eyeballs bulging, blood vessels bursting, his face contorted with a reckless ferocity. "Eliza, that bitch. She deserved it." His mother was terrified by her son's appearance and tried to pull him away, but he shoved her aside. Adrian seemed lost in some frenzied recollection, pointing at the air and cursing. What was she anyway? She came to the marriage with nothing. If it weren't for me, would she be living this good life? But what did she do? Checking my phone every day, controlling my spending, buzzing around my ears like a fly. So annoying. His expression twisted with resentment. I hit her? Hitting her was too light. That kind of ungrateful woman deserves a beating. The more you hit her, the more obedient she gets. But she never learned. She even dared to peek at my computer, trying to catch me with something so she could divorce me and take my assets? Dream on. He panted heavily, his eyes turning cruel and triumphant. That night, she started arguing with me again. I'd had a few drinks and my temper flared up, so I gave her a few shoves. She lost her balance, hit her head on the corner of the desk, and passed out. I looked at her lying there, motionless. A chilling smile appeared on Adrian's face. Suddenly, the world felt quiet. A thought popped into my head. How wonderful would it be if she never woke up? I didn't slip. I didn't. He almost roared, with a perverse sense of pleasure. I did it on purpose. I watched her unconscious, thinking she would never bother me again, never control me again, and I felt so good. When I dragged her into the car, she was still breathing, but I didn't hesitate at all. He seemed to be boasting about his achievement, his tone becoming increasingly excited. I knew about that cliff on the outskirts of the city. No one goes there. It was raining so hard, I drove the car there and dragged her out. She was so light, like a leaf. I walked to the edge of the cliff, looked down at the darkness below, and I wasn't scared at all, only excited. I cursed at her while she was unconscious. Bitch, this is what you get for messing with me. Then I pushed her down. Adrian made a pushing motion, a completely unrestrained, malicious smile on his face. I watched her fall, without a sound, clean and quick. I came back and burned all her things. I told everyone she ran away with someone who could do anything to me. He smiled triumphantly, but the laughter soon turned into a sob, filled with fear. But I didn't expect she wouldn't rest even after death. She became a ghost. She possessed you and came back to find me. Clara. No. Eliza. You won't let me go. He turned to me, his eyes filled with extreme fear and resentment. You win. Are you satisfied? I admit it. I killed you. I murdered you deliberately. I wanted you dead. So what? What can you do to me? He cried and laughed like a madman, completely exposing the darkest and most despicable aspects of his inner self. Not an accident, not an impulse, but a calm, malicious murder. His mother was paralyzed with fear, slumped on the ground repeating, "He's crazy. My son's crazy." And I remained standing there quietly. Even the sound of the wind and rain seemed to have stopped. I looked at the man on the ground who had completely torn off his disguise and revealed his demonic nature. My face devoid of any emotion. Only the corners of my mouth, in the shadows, very slowly, curved into an icy, chilling arc. Adrian, you finally said it. This malicious truth is your fastest ticket to hell. I gently raised my hand and pointed to an inconspicuous decorative vase in the corner of the living room. Behind the vase, a faint red light was flashing almost imperceptibly. Honey, my voice was as soft as the night breeze, but with a fatal chill. Did you forget to turn off the live stream? Adrian's pupils suddenly contracted to pinpoint size. He looked in the direction I was pointing, and the red light, like the eyes of a demon, instantly pierced his last shred of hope. No. He let out an inhuman howl and crawled toward the vase. He frantically tore away the debris behind the vase, and a phone in live streaming mode appeared before his eyes. The screen was filled with frantically scrolling comments, almost overflowing. Beast. Scumbag. Death penalty. Intentional homicide. The evidence is conclusive. It's recorded. They recorded everything. The police are coming. Scumbag. Wait to die. It turned out that when I regained consciousness and began cleaning up the mess, I had inadvertently turned on the phone that had been set up and hidden in the dark to start a live stream. From the moment Adrian broke down, to every word and every hateful sentence he confessed how he maliciously murdered Eliza. It was all transmitted clearly and completely to countless netizens through this hidden lens. The evidence was irrefutable. The whole internet witnessed it. Turn it off. Turn it off. Adrian was like a madman, grabbing the phone and trying to smash it on the ground. Smash it, I said coldly, my voice no longer having the slightest gentleness, only bone-chilling coldness. Smashing it won't do any good. Countless people have already screen-recorded it. Adrian, you're finished. This sentence was like the last straw that broke Adrian. Extreme fear instantly transformed into desperate madness. He suddenly turned his head, his blood-red eyes fixed on me. That look as if he wanted to devour me alive. It's you. It's all you. I'll kill you. Like a wild beast out of control, he roared and charged towards me, his hands reaching for my neck. It was clear that he wanted to kill me on the spot. Adrian, don't. His mother, slumped on the ground, let out a shrill scream when she saw this. She somehow found the strength to climb up from the ground and pounced on Adrian, trying to hug him from behind to stop him. Having completely lost his mind, Adrian felt the pull behind him and, without thinking, swung his elbow fiercely backwards. A dull thud, accompanied by the teeth-grinding sound of cracking bones. His mother's small body was slammed into the chest by the blow containing all his madness and strength. Her eyes bulged suddenly, she didn't even grunt, and she was knocked away like a broken doll, the back of her head hitting the edge of the hard marble coffee table hard. Fresh blood instantly gushed out from the back of her head, spreading a dazzling red flower on the floor. Her body twitched twice, then stopped completely. Adrian's hand was still frozen in midair. He stared blankly at his mother lying motionless on the ground, then at his arm with some bloodstains on it, and his whole body seemed to be frozen in place. Extreme fear and the shock of killing his mother with his own hands left his brain blank. At this moment, a creepy giggle broke the silence in the corner. Hee haha. They're dead. They're all dead. Sister Eliza. Did you see that? He killed his mother too. Retribution. It's retribution. It was Crystal. She had somehow gotten up from the ground, her hair disheveled like grass, her face smeared with tears, snot, and saliva, her once exquisite makeup a mess, like a grotesque clown. She gesticulated wildly, her eyes glazed over and unfocused, pointing at Adrian and then at her mother-in-law's corpse, crying and laughing madly. You're next. Adrian. Sister Eliza is coming for you. And Clara. They're right behind you. Look. Look. She suddenly pointed to the empty ceiling and let out a shrill scream. Don't come over. Don't strangle me. I was wrong. I shouldn't have stolen your man. I shouldn't have called you an old hag. Forgive me. She screamed and scratched her neck and face frantically with her hands, leaving bloody marks, obviously completely mentally broken down and lost in her own imagined world of terror. Bang. The front door was kicked open from the outside. Police. Don't move. Fully armed police officers rushed in instantly. The beams of strong flashlights immediately dispelled some of the darkness, clearly illuminating the hellish scene in the living room. Adrian slumped on the ground, his face ashen. His mother-in-law lay in a pool of blood, obviously dead. And Crystal, who was gesturing wildly, hysterical, and like a madwoman in the light. Mom. Adrian looked at the police who rushed in and his mother's corpse, finally broke down completely, his legs softened, slumped on the ground, and let out a desperate wail. One of the police officers quickly stepped forward to check his mother-in-law's breathing and pulse, shaking his head heavily. Control that woman. The leading officer pointed to Crystal, who was completely out of control and highly aggressive and self-harming, and ordered. 2 police officers immediately stepped forward to try to subdue her, but she struggled, bit, kicked, and howled inhumanly, and was finally forcibly pinned down by several people and put in restraints. But she was still twisting, muttering, and her eyes were filled with crazed fear. Another police officer carefully helped me up, who looked weak, had obvious strangle marks on my neck, and was shivering. Madam, are you all right? His voice was as gentle as possible. I leaned on his arm, my body trembling slightly, tears welled up in my eyes instantly, pointed at Adrian, and said in a broken and terrified voice, He killed Sister Eliza. Now he killed Mom. He was going to kill me just now. The live stream recorded everything. Everything was over. Adrian was dragged away like a dead dog with handcuffs on, still muttering unconsciously. Ghosts. There are ghosts. The completely mentally deranged Crystal was sent to the Municipal Mental Health Center by the ambulance that arrived later for compulsory isolation and treatment. The diagnosis was schizophrenia caused by acute stress disorder, accompanied by severe paranoia and self-harm tendencies. She would spend the rest of her life in cold wards, under the control of drugs, and in the endless cage of fear she had woven herself. Her former vanity and glory were all reduced to nothing. Because of the shocking exposure of the live stream, the evidence was conclusive and the case progressed extremely quickly. Eliza's remains were found under the cliff, matching the location Adrian confessed to dumping the body. The death of his mother-in-law was determined to be homicide, which was completely consistent with the situation at the scene and the live stream recording. They wanted to search for me again, but they couldn't find me no matter what. Until a few days later, they found a body that looked exactly like me. The identity verification of this body brought about the most chilling turn. This body was completely consistent with Clara, a female college student who was reported missing 3 months ago. That is to say, from a biological point of view, Clara, who stood in court to testify and identify Adrian, was already a corpse that had been dead for more than 3 months. Combining the fragmented information that Adrian mentioned intermittently when he broke down during interrogation, Riverside, female college student, resistance, slip-up. The police re-investigated Clara's disappearance case and conducted a search of the relevant river section, and finally found conclusive evidence confirming Adrian's other murder. Eliza, Clara, Adrian's mother, 3 lives. The evidence chain was complete, the circumstances were extremely bad, and the social impact was huge. Adrian was sentenced to death and executed immediately. The night before the execution, Adrian was held in solitary confinement. The lights in the cell were dim, and he curled up in the corner, looking like a withered tree, his eyes glazed over, and he was in a semi-mad state. A cold wind swept past silently. Adrian suddenly looked up. On the cold cement ceiling of the cell, a vague figure of a woman in white with long hair slowly appeared. Without feet floating there. A face shifting in the shadows. One moment, Eliza's brow and eyes filled with endless resentment. The next, Clara's young but lifeless face. An ethereal, icy voice filled with bone-deep hatred rang directly in the depths of his mind, like a judgment from the 9 hells. Adrian. Hell is your home. Clara and I will forever thank you. We'll see you soon. Adrian's pupils dilated to the extreme. A gurgling sound escaped his throat. His body convulsed violently, and finally, in extreme terror, his heart stopped. Forensic identification. Died of acute cardiogenic sudden death, induced by extreme terror. In the end, he didn't live to hear the dawn gunshot. And the truth about Clara, with Adrian's death and the case settling, became an inexplicable mystery in the sealed files. In the intensive care ward of the mental hospital, Crystal begged and screamed at the air day after day, never regaining consciousness to see the world again before her death. Her madness was the most direct and cruel price she paid for the path she chose. Only a few insiders who participated in the case still felt a bone-chilling chill when they recalled it late at night. Who exactly was that walking, vengeful body? Perhaps only the cold wind under the cliff that night, and the weeping river knew the answer. Adrian died in the cage of fear he had woven himself, died ugly and abject. Crystal went mad, and would live the rest of her life in the nightmare she deserved. The mother-in-law paid with her life. The clamor on the internet gradually subsided, and new hot topics covered the old blood and tears. This world is very forgetful. For me, this revenge that had lasted too long finally came to an end. The overwhelming resentment that had supported me in lingering in the world dissipated little by little like the receding tide. I didn't feel the pleasure I expected, only a bone-deep fatigue and a vast, empty tranquility. I became very light as a breeze, a feather. The sun penetrated my body. No longer with a burning sensation, only a faint warmth. I knew I didn't have much time left. Before leaving, I had 2 last thoughts that I had to settle. One drizzly morning, I floated back to the villa that had held countless pain and despair for me. It had been sealed, the clamor of the internet celebrity home was gone, leaving only silence and desolation. I passed through the walls, the interior a mess, the expensive live streaming equipment covered in dust, and dark stains faintly visible on the floor. I calmly looked over every corner. The place in the living room where I used to kneel and mop the floor, the stove in the kitchen where I used to cook sleep-aiding soup for them every night, that cold guest room, and the place where Adrian finally collapsed. There was no more hate, no more attachment. For me, this was just a huge tomb, burying Eliza's body and also burying Adrian's humanity. I turned and left without hesitation. There was nothing left to care about here. My second and most important thought was my parents. When I came to their simple but clean home, It was just dawn. My father was sitting by the window, wearing his reading glasses, repeatedly stroking photos of me when I was a child, his back bent severely. My mother was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, her movements slow, wiping the corners of her eyes with her apron from time to time. My heart felt as if it was tightly grasped by an invisible hand, aching so much that I couldn't breathe. I was not a good daughter, causing them worry while alive, and causing them the heart-wrenching pain of burying their child in death. My revenge, although it brought justice to evil, could not make up for the harm it caused them. I saw the final judgment documents from the court on the coffee table, as well as several newspapers reporting the outcome of the case. In this way, they confirmed their daughter's innocence, but also repeatedly relived the grief of losing me. I couldn't touch them, couldn't comfort them. I could only gently, with this soon-to-disappear soul, surround them. I heard my mother murmur in her heart, "Eliza, the bad people have been punished, rest in peace, don't worry about Mom and Dad." "Dad, Mom, your daughter has been unfilial," I said silently in my heart, using all my last strength to convey that sense of relief and peace to them bit by bit. A breeze blew, stirring the jasmine on the windowsill, my favorite flower when I was alive. A faint fragrance filled the air. My mother's movements in preparing breakfast suddenly stopped. She looked up as if sensing something, looked at the sky gradually brightening outside the window, and the sad wrinkles on her face seemed to ease a little. My father also took off his glasses, took a deep breath, and said softly to my mother, "The weather seems nice today." I knew they felt it. That heavy gloom that had been pressing down on them, making it hard for them to breathe, was slowly dissipating. This was not forgetting but letting go. They could finally start trying to continue on in a world without me. That was enough. My figure became lighter and lighter, more and more transparent. The last scene on earth was my parents supporting each other, sitting at the sunlit table, quietly eating breakfast. Although still silent, the suffocating despair had disappeared. "Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Mom. Live well." Consciousness began to blur, like sinking into warm water. No darkness, no fear, only a kind of peace surrounded by soft light. It felt as if a path was unfolding before my eyes, and at the end of the path was warm light. I closed my eyes, and let myself merge into that light. I don't know how long it had been. It felt like just a moment, yet it also felt like eternity. I was surrounded by a strong sense of squeezing, and then an unprecedented desire for air. I instinctively opened my mouth and let out a loud cry. Dazzling light, noisy sounds, and a tangible feeling of being held in a warm embrace. "It's a beautiful little princess. 6 pounds and 8 ounces, very healthy." A joyful voice sounded beside me. I struggled to open my heavy eyelids, and in the blurry light and shadows, I saw a face full of sweat and fatigue, but filled with incomparable happiness and love. She was looking at me gently, her eyes like the softest feathers. This is my mother. My new mother. I stopped crying and curiously looked at this brand new world. No more hatred, no more fear, no more cold calculations. Only pure love and expectation, enveloping my small body. I gave a small yawn, and in this warm and safe embrace, I felt an unprecedented sense of sleepiness. This time, it's really good. I will grow up well.